tour with Bon Jovi in the spring of 1985. They were on the 7,800 degree Fahrenheit tour, I think it was called. And Barry,
That was the album that he had Runaway on, right? Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So we were on an opening tour slot with Bon Jovi. The album was not quite mixed. I remember Bob was sending me mixes when I was on that tour, and we went back and forth. And then but we were gaining a lot. It wasn't my first time touring, and we were gaining a lot of momentum. A lot of the press was very, very interested in us. And then right in the middle of that tour, the album came out, and it was on a small label then called Roadrunner out of Belgium.
Oh, I know that label. Yeah.
That album broke huge because the timing of it was just perfect. So what ended up happening from that Bob Ezrin production was that they released Barely Holding On as a single. And that album sold like 100,000 albums in 6 weeks. So we were back by the fall, headlining the same venues that we opened up for Bon Jovi in.
Wow.
That year. So that was a result of that Bob Ezrin album. It really broke us in Europe. Canada was a struggle. Ralph Alfonso used to work he eventually worked for Network, but he used to work for Attic Records. He and I went on a promo tour for Barely Holding On across Canada. And I got to tell you, it was difficult because Canadian radio, they just didn't get me. You know, my first few albums, people knew of me because, of course, the Metal Queen video got some air. That was the inception of Much Music. So it was one of the very first, videos to be played. I mean, I guess you can call it viral back then on Much Music, but Canadian radio did not play me. It was real. They did not get, this was the land of, Anne Murray and Joni Mitchell, and there were not girls doing a more aggressive form of music at that time. So I felt like it was beating our head against the wall doing that promo tour because radio was just like, not, it was at the bottom of their record pile, that album. They were not that interested in it. They just didn't seem to get a girl making more, like rock music. Of course, that a decade later with Alanis and Avril Lavigne and completely changed that landscape, right?
Yeah.
But
right around the time of 89 in Toronto, when you were like all over, like as a matter of fact, I think we have a picture of it somewhere. We'll probably throw it up on an overlay and post on this, but there's a picture of you and Gallagher on the cover of TV Guide. I mean, you were huge. You were all over the place. Yeah. Dan Gallagher.
Oh yeah. Danny was, he was one of the infamous hosts of Much Music back then.
Yeah. Yeah. I've met him a few times. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. I knew all those guys really well. Wonderful. It was a real fun crew of people back then,
Yeah.
But yeah, Much had the Much Awards. So he and I, in 89, of course, and 89, I think it was the 1990 Much Music Video Awards. My album I was a big star back then. And they invited me and Danny to co-host the Much Awards. So that's why we ended up on the cover of TV Guide together.
In 89, when I first really took note of you in a big way, because you were all over the place, but that was also around the time that Alana Miles' album started hitting.
Yes.
I think she just, Now, did that benefit you in a way? Because it brought another girl who's doing like her rock wasn't as aggressive as yours. It was more pop rock, but did that help sort of elevate you a bit, or was it? Do you recall that era?
Well, what I have to say about yes, but what I have to say about that is by the time my music evolved to 1989, the most aggressive album I ever made was Metal Queen in 1984. And you know what? Metal Queen, I'm sure the only song you've heard from that album is Metal Queen. Am I correct?
Yes,
right.
Yes.
So people only know that song. That was probably the most aggressive song on the album, but it was the album title. So the choice was, let's release that as a single. Metal Queen was a very melodic hard rock record. And my music just continued to evolve. I mean, in 1987, I did an album with Peter Coleman, who was Pat Benatar's producer. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. That spawned, that was a very, very melodic rock record. It had the Only Human single. Only
Okay.
Human was a top 40 hit on Canadian radio. So by
Right.
1987, because it was a ballad, radio went on that in 1987 for me, right?
Oh, okay.
Then by
That was your
1980,
self-titled album, right, Lee Aaron?
that's correct.
Yeah,
By
yeah.
1989, Body Rock was a pop album with, let's be honest, it was a pop album with big guitars.
Yeah. What
That's
you
what
do
Body
with
Rock
my,
was.
what you do with my body and
But finally, Canada was ready for a girl doing that kind of music.
right.
And then, of course, Chris Ward, who was Alana's boyfriend and partner for many years, Chris Ward, Dave Tyson wrote all those songs for Alana Miles. She had this amazing, great voice. She put out this album. So her and I, we put out these albums simultaneous to each other. And Canadian radio, they were just finally ready. AOR was ready for those albums. And so Alana's album, of course, went, she, of course, had a lot of Much Music muscle behind her because of the Chris Ward connection.
Right.
I mean, let's be honest, it's this music business is all about connections. But that did help me because they were like, here's Alana Miles and here's Lee Aaron, who's done another great pop hard rock record. So both of those albums were able to coexist in the scene. And they, I think they elevated each other really. And then of course, a couple of years later, there was Sass. So her and myself, Sass, we were sort of the initial women doing that. And of course, Darby, there was Darby and a couple of years before myself, there was Darby.
And Hollywoods as well.
Pardon me?
Hollywoods with Toronto.
I was going to say Toronto.
Yeah.
Toronto, her and
Yeah.
Sharon Alton,
Yeah.
there were those girls as well. And, but I think that, I'd like to think we kind of paved the way for artists like Alanis Morissette and Avril.
Well,
Who
you
came
certainly
later.
did. There's no two ways about it. And in '89, you were, like I said, Alana Miles was just starting to come up in the ranks. I think she had that Love Is was the big single
Yeah.
that first came out. And you were all over the place. I mean, you'd hear Love Is probably a fair amount because of Christopher Ward, I'm sure. But because I don't think that was the best single on the album, but it was the initial single. But you were all over the place. It's like I said, every time I turned on Much Music, you were on.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Check out our other vignettes and full episodes from a wide variety of guests for more great content. Please like, share, and subscribe, and become a member at SocialNRGPresents.com to access premium content and earn valuable energy points just for watching.